Om Bhurabhuva Sveta Savitoravarinyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaskar, my dear friends. This is video number 8 on Sadhaka-Sanjivani of Swami Ramsukhdasji. Tika, a commentary on the Gita. This video number 8 starts with stanza number 46. Link. Engrossed in surprise and sorrow, Arjuna in the verse that follows relates his decision arrived at after these arguments. Yadi Mam Partikaram Sastram Sastrapane Dhritarashtra Arane Hanyustanme Aksitartaram Bhavet means it would indeed be better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra armed with weapons killed me in battle with me while I will be unarmed and unresisting. Commentary on stanza number 46. Yadi mam partikaram sastaram sastra panyaha dhritarashtra rane hanyam tume akshetratram bhavit. Arjuna says, if I turn away from the war, perhaps our opponents will also desist from it. Why will they fight? If we are determined not to fight. But even if, regarding us as their enemy, they jealously, armed with weapons, kill me, that will indeed be in my own interest, as it will be a kind of repentance for the determination which I had made in the war to kill my perceptors, and I shall be purified of the sins. It means that if I do not wage war, I will escape sin and my race will not be destroyed. When a man talks about a subject, it has its effect on him also. When Arjuna, possessed by extreme passion, started to speak in sadness in the 28th verse, he was not so much overwhelmed with grief as he was now. Then Arjuna did not turn away from war, but went on speaking, overwhelmed with grief. But at last he turns away from war and sits down, having laid down his bow and arrow. Lord Krishna did not speak to enable Arjuna to give an outlet for his feelings of sadness completely, because he knew that his teachings would be of some avail to him only when there was an outlet for his sorrow. An important fact. Worldly people will support the arguments adduced by Arjuna, but they will not agree with Lord Krishna, who will justify war later. The reason is that as Arjuna is full of attachment and love, the worldly people also belong to the same class, so they cannot understand the point of view expressed by Lord Krishna, who always thinks about the welfare and benediction of beings. They will say that Arjuna wanted to escape the sin by not waging war, but it was Lord Krishna who inspired him to wage war, so it was not proper on his part to do so. The fact is that Lord Krishna did not make Arjuna wage war, he reminded him of his duty only. It was Arjuna who had invited Lord Krishna to the war front, but seeing his kinsman on the hostile side, he was turning away from his duty. So Lord Krishna reminded him of not to neglect his duty out of delusion, but to wage war, because there was nothing more welcome to a member of the warrior class than a righteous war. For example, if a man is going to Badri Narayana, but by mistake he starts going in the opposite direction, he then happens to meet a person who asks him where he was going. The latter tells him that he has taken the wrong direction, so he should turn back in order to reach his destination. Here the person shows the right direction way to the man who had lost it. Similarly, Lord Krishna showed Arjuna the right direction of his duty. After seeing his kinsmen arrayed on the war front, Arjuna said to Lord Krishna, I will not fight. Chapter 2, stanza number 9. But after hearing the gospel of Lord Krishna, he did not say, I will not fight, but he said, I will carry out your bidding. Chapter 18, stanza number 73, which I will do my duty. It shows that Lord Krishna reminded him of his duty. The fact is that war was inevitable because Lord Krishna himself, while revealing his supreme divine form to Arjuna, said, I am the mighty world destroying time, the destroyer of the world. My purpose here is to destroy these people. Even if you do not kill them, all those warriors arrayed in the enemy's camp will not survive. Chapter 11, stanza number 32. Thus, this destruction of human beings was inevitable, even if Arjuna did not fight. If Arjuna did not fight, Yudhishthira, who with his four brothers married Draupadi by obeying his mother, would certainly fight by obeying her. Similarly, Bhima would never deviate from the war because he had already taken a pledge to kill the Kauravas. As far as Draupadi is concerned, she had even said that if her husbands, the Pandavas, did not fight, her father Drupada, her brother Drashtadumna, her five sons, and Abhimanyu would fight against the Kauravas. All these facts show that the war was inevitable. A man cannot control the happenings that are predestined. By discharging his duty, one can attain salvation, but by neglecting it, he can degrade himself. It means that man is free to attain either desirable or undesirable results. Therefore, Lord Krishna, by reminding Arjuna of his duty, has preached to him, to human beings, that they should always discharge their duty by following the ordinance of scriptures and never turn away from these. Link. In the preceding verse, Arjuna expressed his intention based on many arguments. What he did after this is contained in the verse that follows, stanza number 47, Sanjay Uvach. एवं उक्त्वा अर्जुनः सङ्खे रथोपस्थ उपाविशत् विसर्ज्य शरं चापं शोकसंविगन्मानसः. Translation. Arjuna, grief-stricken on the battlefield, having spoken thus, and having laid down his bow and arrow, slumped into the central part of the chariot. Commentary on stanza number 47. Evam Muktvarjunah Sankhye Rathopastha Upavisat Visarjaya Sasartam Chapam Suksivam Vignam Nasaha. War is the root cause of all evils. It will destroy, erase, and will lead us to hell in the next world. By thinking so, Arjuna, overwhelmed with sorrow, became firmly determined not to wage war. Arjuna, who had come to the battlefield with great zeal with Gandiva bow in his hand, put the bow and arrow down, and overwhelmed with arrow, sat on the seat of the chariot. The main reason of Arjuna's grief is that when Lord Krishna placed the chariot between the two armies and asked Arjuna to behold the Kauravas, he saw Bhishma and Drona standing in front of him. So his attachment was aroused. Thus he thought about the destruction of his race, which Duryodhana etc. did not perceive, being goaded by greed and the sin accruing from it. Then he said that even if the warriors of the hostile army killed him while he was unarmed and unresisting, that would be for his good. Thus, empowered by delusion, Arjuna perceives good in turning away from war and even in his death, and finally, having abandoned his bow and arrow and overwhelmed with grief, sits on the middle seat of the chariot. Thus we see that it is delusion which changes a hero's Arjuna's great craze to consternation. ओम तत्सदिति श्री मद्भगवत गीता उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्म विद्यायां योग शास्त्रे श्री कृष्ण अर्जुन संवादे अर्जुन विषाद योगो नाम प्रथमो अध्याय. And thus with the words Om Tat Sat, the names of the Lord as sung in the Upanishad of the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord, the science of Brahma, the scriptures on yoga, the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna, and the first chapter entitled The Yoga of Dejection of Arjuna. The colophon at the end of each chapter, written by sage Ved Vyasa, reveals the glory and greatness of the Gita. On Tat Sat, this has been declared as the triple designation of the Absolute. These three names lead the beings to benediction and turn us towards God and spirituality and break off our relationship with the world. These wash away the mistakes which we might have committed in pronouncing the verses, words, and letters in the chapter. So these three are pronounced at the end of each chapter. By Om says Ved Vyasa means that this may wash away the mistakes of the verses. Tat may turn his verses towards God, and Sat means that these verses may give an imperishable fruit. Iti means that has no other personal motive besides this one. The Gita has been called Srimad because it possesses paramount beauty, and it is called Srimad Bhagavad because it has been uttered by Lord Krishna, who possesses six bhagas, that is, divine traits. wealth, virtue, glory, greatness, knowledge and dispassion. It has been called the Gita because it has been sung by the Lord Himself. According to the rules of Sanskrita grammar, it should have been called Gitam, yet it being the essence of Upanishads in feminine gender, it has been called the Gita. The essence of all Upanishads is contained in it and it has emanated from the tongue of the Lord Himself, so it is called Upanishad. It is called Brahma Vidya, supreme knowledge, because it leads the living being to benediction without any distinction of caste, creed, and color. It is called Yoga Shastra because different yogas, disciplines such as Karam Yoga, the discipline of disinterested action. Jnana Yoga, the discipline of knowledge, Dhyana Yoga, the discipline of meditation, and Bhakti Yoga, the discipline of devotion, are contained in it. By following any one of these disciplines, a striver can realize his identity with God Paramatma. It is a dialogue between Lord Krishna and the devotee Arjuna. Arjuna has asked questions without hesitation and Lord Krishna has answered them with generosity. So it is called a dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. In the first chapter, there is description of Arjuna's dejection. By the company of God and saints, this dejection may create dispassion and thus may lead to benediction. Though Duryodhana also possessed dejection, yet having disinclination for God, his dejection is not called yoga, but it is called yoga. In the case of Arjuna, as he could realize his identity with God by means of this yoga, so this chapter is entitled The Yoga of Dejection of Arjuna. The purpose of the concluding words which are given at the end of each chapter is that even a single chapter well meditated upon may lead a striver to benediction. Words, letters, and the vacha said in the first chapter. Number 1. In this chapter, in Atha Prathamo Dhyaya, there are three words in Dhritarashtra Vacha and Sanjaya Vacha, etc. There are 12 words in verses. There are 558 words, and there are 13 concluding words. Thus, the total number of words is 586. 2. In this chapter, in Atha Prathamo Dhyaya, there are 7 letters in Dhritarashtra Vacha, Sanjaya Vacha, etc. There are 37 letters in verses. There are 1504 letters and the concluding letters are 48. In this way, the total number of letters in this chapter is 1596. Each verse in this chapter consists of 32 letters. 3. In this chapter, Uvacha said has been used 6 times. Dhritarashtra Uvacha once, Sanjay Uvacha thrice, Arjun Uvacha twice. meters used in the first chapter. Out of the 47 verses of this chapter, in the first quarter of the fifth verse, as well as the 33rd verse, and in the third quarter of the 43rd verse, Ra Gana being used, there is Ra Viputa meter, while in the first quarter of the 25th verse and the third quarter of the ninth verse, Na Gana being used, there is Na Viputa meter. The remaining 42 verses have the characteristics of right, Pathya Vaktra, Anu, Anus, Stop meter. Now starts second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Sri Hari, second chapter in introduction. Duryodhana mentioned the great warriors of the two armies, but Dronacharya did not utter a word. So Duryodhana became sad. Then Bhishma blew his conch loudly to cheer Duryodhana. Hearing the sound of his conch, the conch, drums, and cow horns, etc. of the Kaurava and Pandava armies blared forth. After this, from the 20th verse, the dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna began. Arjuna asked Lord Krishna to place his chariot in the midst of the two armies. The Lord, having placed the chariot between the two armies in front of Bhishma and Drona, etc., asked Arjuna to behold the Kurus. Having seen his kinsman, he was filled with compassion and sadness that he cast away his bow and arrows and slumped into the seat of the chariot. The second chapter starts with Sanjay telling Dhritarashtra what Lord Krishna had said to Arjuna when he was overwhelmed with grief. Sanjay was first stanza of chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Tam tatha कृपया विष्टम स्वरूप अश्रु पूरण कुल अक्षेव कुलेक्षणम विसिद अंतमिदम वाक्यम उवाच मधुसूदन. Sanjay said, Madhusudana, he who has destroyed the demon named Madhu, addressed the following words to Arjuna, who was overwhelmed with compassion and in deep distress, and whose eyes were flooded with tears of despondence. Commentary on verse number 1 of chapter 2. Tam tatha Karpaya Vishtam. Arjuna advises Lord Krishna to place his chariot in between the two armies so that he may behold the war-minded warriors who dared to risk their lives by fighting against such a valiant warrior as he. But the same heroic and jealous Arjuna, at the sight of his heroic and zealous Arjuna, at the sight of his kinsman, becomes overwhelmed with grief, his limbs give way, his mouth is parched, his body shivers, his hairs stand on end, his bow slips from his hand, his skin burns all over, and his mind reels. His bravery turns into faint-heartedness, and he slips into the seat of the chariot. Sanjay conveys the same feelings of Arjuna, who was drowned in distress and despondency. Asrupna Kulikshanam. Such a valiant warrior Arjuna was full of familial attachment, and his eyes were full of tears that he could not even see clearly. Visida antam dim vakya munacha madhusudana. Lord Krishna Madhusudana said the following words, the words which will be repeated in the second and third verses to Arjuna, who was overwhelmed with grief because of his loss of praise. Here, Visida Anta Muvacha was enough because the word Vakyam is also included in the verb Uvacha, but the word Vakyam has a special meaning. These words of Lord Krishna are very profound and uncommon. These attack Arjuna's faint-heartedness and despondency, which overpowered Arjuna in the discharge of his duty. They make him aware of his weakness and arouse in him a desire for benediction. It is because of these profound words of Lord Krishna that Arjuna, by becoming his disciple and seeks refuge in him. Sanjay, by using the word Madhusudana, means to say that Lord Krishna is the killer of demon Madhu, that is, he is the destroyer of people having a villainous nature, and so he will certainly destroy wicked natured Duryodhana and his group. Link. The next two verses contain what Lord Krishna told Arjuna. Verse 2 of chapter 2. Sri Bhagwan Vach Kutastva Kasmalam Midam Dvisme Sam Upastitam Anarye Justam Savragya Kirti Karam Arjun. The blessed Lord said, Arjuna, how has this affliction overtaken you at this odd hour? It is shunned by noble souls. Neither could it bring heaven nor fame to you. Commentary on stanza 2. Arjuna, Lord Krishna addresses him as Arjun, which means pure in heart. The Lord means to say how he has become faint-hearted when it is quite unbecoming of him. Kutastava kasmalam idam visme sampusthitam. Lord Krishna, being surprised, asked Arjuna why he has developed faint-heartedness instead of valor and zeal at this juncture. A man is surprised in two ways, out of his own ignorance and as a warning to others. Lord Krishna's surprise here is a warning to Arjuna so that he may be aware of his duty. Kutaha means that this faint-heartedness is not permanent in him, it is only a temporary phase which will go away. Samupasthitam means you are faint-hearted not only in words and feelings but also in actions. You are overcome by this faint-heartedness and therefore you sat in the middle of the chariot after abandoning your bow and arrows. The Lord is called Bhagwan because he possesses six bhagas, divine traits. They are wealth, virtue, glory, greatness, knowledge, and dispassion. Anar Yajustam. Great people do not become faint hearted, they shun the feeling because it does not lead them to any good. Great men who want to achieve success do so with fixed objectives during activity as well as non-activity. They do not shirk their duty according to prevailing circumstances. They perform their duty thoroughly, with zeal and readiness in order to achieve emancipation. So it is not proper on his part to refrain from the duty of fighting because of cowardice. Asvargyam. If we leave aside the goal of success and consider the matter from a worldly point of view, the attainment of heaven is the highest achievement. With this timidity, you cannot even attain the heaven. Akriti karm. Even without having the aim of attainment of heaven, a noble person performs those deeds which bring him name and fame in the world. But this cowardice would defame you, so it does not befit you at all to be faint hearted. Here the Lord, by giving these three expressions, honor Anaryajustam, Asavargyam, and Akirtikaram, in a sequence has explained that there are three types of persons. Number one, thoughtful, whose aim is to attain benediction. Number two, virtuous, who by doing virtuous actions want to attain heaven. Three, and ordinary, who want name and fame in the world. So, by giving the above mentioned three kind, Lord Krishna wants to warn Arjuna that his affliction would bring him neither benediction nor heaven nor fame, but would degrade and defame him and lead him to hell. Link. In the verse that follows, Lord Krishna points out what to do when a person is in the grip of cowardice. Kalaibem masam gam parth nai tattav yupapadate aksudram hriday dorbalyam takto tisth partamp. Translation. O Partha, son of Partha, with Kunti, yield not to cowardice. It does not befit you. Cast off this petty faint-heartedness and wake up, O vanquisher of foes. Commentary on third stanza. Partha, Lord Krishna addresses Arjuna as Partha to remind him of Mother Kunti's message and arouse in him feelings of bravery which befits the members of a warrior class. It means that he should not disobey his mother by showing cowardice. Klabhyam ma sama gamaha. It is because of faint-heartedness that Arjuna perceives it, righteous not to wage war and unrighteous to wage war. Therefore, to warn him, Lord Krishna says that it is impotence rather than righteousness not to wage war. So he should abandon this weakness. Ne tattva ve padiyate. You should not have developed this timidity in you because you are the son of a brave mother of warrior class and you yourself are also brave. Therefore, this weakness does not befit you at all. Prapantapa, you are the scorcher and vanquisher of foes, so will you gladden your enemies by showing your disinclination for war? Akshudram herdaya dorbalyam tyak votiksha. Here, Akshudram has two meanings. Number one, this faint-heartedness will make you lowly, which it will deprive son of you of salvation, heaven, or fame. And if you Do not abandon it, you will become insignificant. Number two, this faint-heartedness is petty, so it is not difficult for a brave person like you to abandon. You are thinking that being virtuous, you do not want to commit a sin by waging war, but it is your cowardice. So by abandoning it, you should discharge your duty by arraying yourself to wage war. Lord Krishna knows for certain that it is Arjuna's first and foremost duty to wage war. So he, without caring for Arjuna's lame excuses, orders him quickly to wage war with full preparations. Appendix. This fact has been described in detail by the Lord ahead from the 31st verse to the 38th verse of this chapter. Being the son of Partha, Arjuna is called Partha. This word manifests intimacy between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. In the Gita, Lord Krishna has used this address 38 times, more than any other address. The second place goes to Kaunteya, which has been used 24 times. When Lord Krishna wants to say something special or give assurance to Arjuna, or there is an overflow of love for him, he calls him Partha. By addressing him thus, he wants to remind him that besides being the son of his father's sister, he is loving devotee and friend. Gita chapter 4 verse number 3. Therefore he tells him something very secret and true for his welfare. Kunti's message to Arjuna and to Bhima, who were ever eager to fight, it is the time for which the mother of the warrior class give birth to her sons. Link. In the first chapter, Arjuna gave several arguments against the war, but without attaching importance to his arguments, Lord Krishna suddenly scolded Arjuna for his faint-heartedness and ordered him to array himself to his war. So Arjuna, without getting any satisfactory reply to his arguments, got excited and spoke abruptly. Arjun watch. Katham Bhisam Bhisam Ahem Sankhe Dronam Chay Madhusudan Isubhi Partiyotishyami Puja Puja Har Varishudan. Arjuna said, O slayer of Madhu and slayer of foes, how shall I fight Bhishma and Drona with arrows on the battlefield? Both of them are worthy of our worship. Commentary. Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudan and Arisudan because he had killed unrighteous, villainous, and cruel demons such as Madhu, etc., and foes also who always are jealous of others without rhyme or reason. But how can he kill his great well-wisher, the respected grandfather Bhishma, and adorable preceptor Drona, who have great affection for him? Katham Bhisham Maham Sankhaye Dronam Cha. I am not turning away from war because of faint-heartedness, but because it is unrighteous for me to fight with the revered grandsire Bhishma and venerable teacher Drona. I would be called unmanly if I were afraid of death. I am not afraid of dying, but I do not want to kill my venerable elders who have always been very affectionate to me. Grandfather Bhishma has loved me since my childhood. When I addressed him as father, he very affectionately used to say that he was my father's father. Similarly, my adorable preceptor Drona has been so kind to me that he imparted to me better training imp- kind to me that he imparted to me better training than he imparted even to his son. He taught the use of Brahma weapon, a kind of weapon which caused infallible destruction and set in motion by incantation to both of us. But as far as its control or end is concerned, he thought that only to me, not to his son. He also granted me a boon that no one would excel me in military science. So it is a mortal sin to wage war against them. Isubhi Pratiyodasami Pujasu. Both Bhishma and Drona, being elderly, are venerable and adorable. They have a right to attack me, but it is a deadly sin for me to fight against them with my arrows. Link. In the preceding verse, Arjuna, being excited, revealed his decision to Lord Krishna. Now, being influenced by Lord Krishna's words and balancing his decision with that of Lord Krishna, he says, verse number 5. गुरुन् हत्वा हि महानुभावान् श्रेयो भोक्तुं भैक्ष्यम्पि हि लोके हत्वार्थकामांस्तु गुरुन् हैव भुज्य भोगान् रुधिरप्रदिग्धान्. Better to live on alms in this world than to slay these noble elders, because after killing them we could enjoy only blood-stained pleasures in the form of wealth and sense objects. Commentary on verse number 5. It seems after reading this verse that the words of Lord Krishna uttered in the second and third verses had some effect on Arjuna. He is thinking that though Lord Krishna knows that it is not justified for him to kill his venerable elders, yet he is unable to understand why he is ordering him to wage war. So Arjuna does not speak with excitement but speaks somewhat politely. Gurun hatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhuktam bhaiksu mapiha loki. Arjuna first presents his point of view, saying that if he did not fight with Reverend Bhishma and Drona etc., Duryodhana by himself would not fight with him either. Thus he would lose his kingdom and suffer. Then he would be leading a life of misery and could even depend on alms. But he thinks it better to live on alms than to slay his reverend elders. Ba loke means if I live on alms, people in the world will dishonor, reproach, and insult me. But I think accepting alms is better than killing my reverend preceptor. Epi even means for me slaying the noble preceptor than living on alms. Both are forbidden, but I think it is more sinful to kill the preceptor than to live on alms. हत्वार्थे कदम तस्तु गुरुम हव्वा भुंजीवा भोगान Rudhira pradigdhan. If I carry out your command to wage war, I would enjoy blood-stained pleasure, which will not give me peace and salvation. Here a question might arise that Bhishma and Drona etc. preceptors were attached to Kauravas because of pecuniary motives. Therefore, what is the objection if Artha Kaman is taken as an adjective qualifying Gurun? The answer is that it is not proper because they had no desire for money. It was incumbent upon them to fight on Duryodhana's side because they had eaten his salt. Secondly, Arjuna has used the term Mahanubhavan, most noble, so how can the most noble souls desire money? Those who desire money could not be most noble. Therefore, here Arthakaman is the adjective which qualifies Bhogan, an exceptional fact. Lord Krishna in the second and third verses orders Arjuna to array himself by casting off petty faint-heartedness and fight. But Arjuna gets him wrong because he thinks that Lord Krishna had ordered him to wage war so that he might enjoy the pleasure of kingship. Arjuna, however, perceived only evil in waging the war. He said that it would be better for him if his opponents killed him in the war. So, with his mind affected by grief, he sat slumped on the seat of the chariot. Chapter 1, stanza number 47. He had also said that Duryodhana and his companions, being goaded by greed, were prepared to wage war. Now Arjuna says for himself that if he carries out his orders and wages war, he will enjoy only blood-stained pleasure in the form of wealth and sensual enjoyment. Thus he perceives nothing but evil in waging war. When an evil comes to us in the form of an evil, it is easier to do away with it than when it comes in the garb of something good. Ramana and devil Kala Nemi could not be recognized by Sita and Hanuman respectively because both of them disguised themselves as sages. Similarly, Arjuna perceives that it is virtuous not to wage war and it is an evil to wage the war, but he is completely mistaken. Hence, even Lord Krishna finds it difficult and time consuming to bring Arjuna round to the realization of this fact. Today, in the name of unity in society, people are determined to abolish caste, stage of life system, varna asrama, thinking of their action as virtuous, but they are not thinking about the disastrous consequences that this abolition would force the people to lead a degraded and demoniacal life in the same way. In the accumulation of wealth, people do not perceive falsehood, fraud, dishonesty, knavery, and treachery, etc., as evils. Thus, here for Arjuna also, an evil of unmanliness has disguised itself as righteousness, and thus he says how he can slay his noble elders. It means that whatever Arjuna considers a virtue is in fact an evil, but it does not appear to him to be an evil, as in the abandonment of his duty has crept in the guise of virtue of non-violence because of his attachment for his relatives. Appendix: the feelings of elders and preceptors such as Bhishma and Drona etc. are noble and pure because even while waging the war they have no partiality. The worldly people having a materialistic outlook cannot even think of spiritualism. Here Arjuna also being overtaken by family attachment and infatuation, is thinking only of materialism rather than spiritualism. So he is thinking that Lord Krishna wants him to wage the war so that he may obtain kingdom, but Lord Krishna wants him to attain salvation. So I conclude this video here. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks a lot. Namaskar my dear friends. Namaskar. Thank you.